You're tuned to Klassix from the Closet with Dennis Wood on OK 1029. This is Klassix from the Closet.
All right, we've got a very special guest joining us on the program this morning. This is one of the most versatile men in the hard rock world. Mr. Jeff Pilson is with us. Jeff is a multi-platinum recording artist, a premier songwriter, bassist, vocalist. He's a record producer and sometimes actor. And he's been in 3 of the biggest bands in the world. In the 1980s, his band Dokken sold out concerts around the globe, all over MTV, sold 10 million albums. After Dokken, he went on to join another legendary metal band, Dio, with his good friend Ronnie James Dio. So how do you follow up being in Dokken and Dio? Will you become a member of one of the most successful rock bands of all time? We're talking about Foreigner, and they are coming here to rock the grandstand stage at the Clearfield County Fair. That is going to be this Wednesday night. It is a pleasure to welcome Jeff Pilson to the program. Good morning, Jeff. Hey, thanks for taking the time to speak with me this morning.
Wow, well, after an intro like that, I better be good.
Expectations are high, buddy. Hey, you've got such an interesting story, so I want to get right to this and right back to the beginning. Now, as a young person, what and who inspired you to get into music?
Beatles, yeah. I was one of, I'm kind of not afraid to say how old I am, which is old. And it was the Beatles. I saw them on Ed Sullivan, and I said, you know what? That's what I want to do. Now, it took several years, but that was what I'm absolutely convinced that was what planted the bug that resulted in all this.
Now, Paul McCartney, is that why you're on the bass?
Not specifically, but, I was a Beatle fan before I became a bass player, so it was like one of those added things. Like, once I became a bass player and realized how great McCartney was, it was like, wow, it's been right in front of me this whole time. So, yeah, I mean, he's a favorite, but actually not necessarily the reason I started playing bass.
So, in the early 80s, you're in your early 20s, you go to Southern California to pursue the dream, and that early 80s metal scene in L.A., that's just the stuff of legend. There's been books about it, movies about it. What was it like to be part of that? And how do you get into Dokken?
Well, what it was like, I had just moved to L.A. because of exactly what you're talking about. I knew there was a metal scene. I'd been living up in San Francisco, and hard rock metal was just not even being played there. It was all new wave, punk, stuff that wasn't particularly my wheelhouse at the time. So anyways, I moved to L.A. The scene is going on. Don Dokken ends up calling a guy by the name of Mike Varney, who is sort of known as a guy that gets people in bands together, connects musicians with bands, etc. He had a column and guitar player at the time, and it turns out Mike and I were very, very close friends. Mike and I had been in a band in San Francisco together called Cinema. So when I moved to L.A., Don called Mike and said, hey, you know of any singing bass players? Juan had just left Dokken to join Rat, so I had just moved there. Worked out perfect.
In 1984, then, the Tooth and Nail album, that breaks Dokken nationally, especially the single Alone Again, and you and Don Dokken wrote that song. How did that song come about?
Well, Don actually wrote bits of that song, in particular, the I'm alone again without you. He had that line, and I think he wrote that like years before that. So he had the kind of a sketching of a song there. He and I got together. None of the other guys were really too into that song at that point, but I thought there was something I thought that hook was just amazing. I love Don's voice on it. So anyways, we finished the song, and he and I demoed it, and we played it for the band. Again, the band wasn't terribly excited, but, we said, it's strong, so let's record it. So we recorded it. And then, of course, management didn't even want to put it out as a single, because this is kind of before the whole power ballad thing had sort of, overcrept the metal market. When we put it out as a single and did the video, it was a bit of a risk at the time. But then, of course, after that, Motley Crue did Home Sweet Home, and then the rest is history. So, it was a bit of a struggle getting that song to where it needed to be. But this is where you got to love a guy like Don, who, when he does feel strongly about something, he'll stick to his guns, and he did, and he was right.
Let's take a listen to that track. Here's Jeff Pilson with Dokken and Alone Again. A great track there, Jeff. Great memories of that tune for me. That takes me right back to the 80s. And what did it feel like when that kind of song, like you said, the management pushed back, some of the band pushed back. What's it feel like when that's all over the radio, all over MTV, and still resonates with people?
Well, it just shows you that, we did good work, and we worked very hard to make that a great recording. And, George's solo is beautiful on that song. I mean, it's like one of those pieces of magic. And, it's the magic that we all love music for. We don't love it just because it's in the background when we're at the doctor's office. We love it because there's something passionate about it and magical. And I just think that that's one of those moments.
So you guys go from being a club band to playing stadiums around the world, just like in a matter of years, a couple of years. What was that adjustment like for you?
It felt slow to us. It felt like it was a slow coming on because, remember, Motley and Rat exploded before we did. So, I mean, we were starting to get well known. And I think the slow build is a good thing. But it seemed like everything was happening slowly to us because of what was going on. Rat, in particular, were really close friends. So with Rat and Motley blowing up like that, it always felt like we were catching up. But anyways, the adjustment was great. We got a lot better as a band. And when I see, videos of us by like 1987, we're sounding pretty damn good. So, it was just a great all-around experience.
Let's go back to that 1987. That Under Lock and Key album is amazing. And In My Dreams. How do you guys come up with a track like that? What's your memories of that track?
Well, that track, once again, Don had the chorus, in my dreams it's still the same, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So he showed me that. I loved it. Thought it was great. And then we just built the whole song around it.
Let's take a listen to that one. Here's Dawkins.
In my dreams it's still the same.
Okay, from 1986. Remember how big that song was? That was everywhere. In My Dreams from Dawkins. Co-written and performed by my special guest this morning, Mr. Jeff Pilson. Now, it's famously known there's a lot of tension in Dawkins, especially between Don and George Lynch. How did the band function so well with all that going on? I mean, that tension, did it elevate your game? And how did you, Jeff, manage it? Because I kind of see you being in the middle of that.
Well, that's kind of how it was portrayed, and there is some truth to that. Well, my personal feeling is that the animosity made things worse, and that's why we broke up when we did, and that's why we never, really got to do the big, long, gigantic headlining run that we really felt like we needed to do. And we never got to that because we broke up too soon, in my opinion. I ended up playing middleman a lot just because, honestly, Don and it really comes to this. Don and George working together was not a great combo. And it wasn't like they always argued. They just kind of didn't connect on that vibe level. However, when we did it as a group, it did. And so it did seem to work out better when I worked with George and Mick, and then Don and I did things, it certainly helped set up my production career because I had to learn a lot of skills, but it was just a way of getting good chemistry with the songwriting and the recordings, and we found a good place to do that where we were very functional. However, I still always feel that if there had been less egos, less drugs, we would have been a lot better off.
So following up Dawkins, and this is just crazy to me, you end up in Dio. Now, most guys have to audition to get into a band, but I've heard this story, and I got to confirm this with you. Vinny Appice and Ronnie James Dio come to your house. I guess they're asking you for a bass player for Dio, and you'll say you'll join, but they have to do something around the house for you?
Okay. Well, what happened, and I just saw Vinny the other night, we went over this again to make sure it's right. What happened was Ronnie and Vinny showed up at my house at the front door. And it was kind of out of the blue, although, we were really good friends, and we'd go out to have dinner and stuff like that. But this was probably like at noon or something. Anyways, they show up at the door, and they said, hey, bass player. And I go, yeah, me. And they said, well, we want to go play, but look at your lawn. And I did. And, I'm one of those guys. I am not handy. If I lived somewhere on my own, I would probably let all the plants and grass die because I'm just not aware of it. I'm a musician.
I'm with you.
So anyways, they said, what's the deal with your sprinklers? And I said, I have no idea. So they came in and they said, okay, we're going to fix your sprinklers. So they went to Home Depot. They got some stuff. They got all this together. And Ronnie and Vinny are out in my backyard. And I swear to God, it was really quick. I mean, I want to say it was like within a half an hour. They all of a sudden, my sprinklers are working fine. They said, okay, let's go play. So we did.
So you're not handy, but it turns out Ronnie James Dio is.
And Vinny Adams is.
Now, everything that I've ever heard or listened to, stories and accounts, Ronnie James Dio was just an absolute peach of a human being. And I know you guys are pretty tight, right?
We were indeed, yes. And I love, you want to get me to fawn all over somebody, Ronnie would be the guy. I mean, we just had his 80th birthday celebration the other day at the Rainbow here with Eddie Trunk's show, and it was amazing how many people were there to really pay tribute. Ronnie was a great human being. His talent goes without saying. The fact that his music is going to live on, which really excites me, by the way, seeing Eddie Munson wearing a Dio shirt in Stranger Things, all those kind of things, it's so great that it's getting the cultural impact it deserves. But he was but it all kind of stems from the fact that he was a wonderful human being with a lot of integrity. And he was an amazing friend. He is the type that would give you the shirt off his back. That is not an exaggeration with him. And he was just a wonderful, wonderful man and a wonderful friend. And obviously we miss him musically, but I miss him even more as a friend.
I got a live cut here of you with Ronnie James Dio and the rest of the guys here. Let's take a listen to that. Here's Dio with Jeff Pilson live in concert. All right, that's Jeff Pilson live in concert with Dio, and you can catch Jeff live in concert with Foreigner. That's going to be this Wednesday night on the Grandstand stage at the Clearfield County Fair. In 2001, Jeff, you make the jump from the big stage to the big screen. You were in the film Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg and Jennifer Aniston. What was that like being in a movie, and had you ever acted before?
Well, when I was a kid, I had acting desires. Real, sixth grade kind of stuff. That was actually the first profession I ever thought I was going to be was an actor. But having said that, no, I had never had any real acting experience. When I was being asked to basically play myself, which is kind of easy, but I did have to, work with the casting people, and they did have to, run lines and everything to make sure that, I was good for the part. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. I was originally brought in just to play bass on the music, because in a movie they oftentimes do the music first. So I was brought in to play bass on the recordings. What we did is we set up as a band. Jason Bonham, Zach Wilde, myself, and Nick Cantonese, we set up and we started playing to work on the songs, and pretty quickly the musical director job just kind of fell in my lap, because a lot of times when I join bands, that's just kind of what naturally happens. It's not anything I necessarily try to do, but I started working with the band, and the director would come down to the rehearsals, and one day he came up to me and he said, he goes, I love the vibe in here. This is, I wanted a real band for this thing, and you guys are a real band. I said, well, yeah, of course. We're friends and we're great musicians, so, And he said, would you want to be in the movie? And, the light bulb went off and said, yes. So then they asked me to read the lines, and there you go.
So what's interesting is being in that movie Rockstar ends up getting you the gig in Foreigner. Now, how's that go down?
Yeah, very interesting. Well, because I did the movie with Jason Bonham a couple years later when he started working with Mick Jones, and they honestly weren't exactly sure what it was going to be at first. Is it going to be Mick Jones solo or what? But Jason kind of talked him into revamping Foreigner, and they brought me in just because Jason and I had a good chemistry. So when I came in, we had a charity show to do in the summer of 2004. That's kind of how we gathered, and so we got together to start playing for a few days, and the chemistry was just undeniable. And everybody was on fire, and we realized we had something. Then, of course, the following March, when Kelly Hansen joins the band, that's when we really take off, and never been the same since.
What's it like working with somebody as legendary as Mick Jones?
It's wonderful. I mean, Mick's a great person. Again, like another Ronnie thing, he's just a great human being. But his story, I mean, this is a guy, where did he learn to play the intro to Hey Joe? He learned it in the back of a tour bus from Jimi Hendrix, because they were on tour together at the end of 1966. Who was in the room when the Beatles got their telegram telling them that they had just gone #1 with I Want to Hold Your Hand? Mick Jones was in there because the Beatles were in Paris playing the Olympia Theater, and Mick was in the opening band, Sylvie Vartan, and when they discovered that Mick was English, they started including him in all the parties. So he would go up and drink and party with those guys every night, and so he happened to be in the room when they got the telegram saying that I Want to Hold Your Hand went #1. Wow. How insane is that?
That's crazy. Now you guys play a ton of shows with Foreigner, and you guys have done some really unique shows too, including you did some concerts backed with an orchestra and a choir. And this is a wild fact. The recordings of that show that you guys did with the 21st Century Symphony in Luzerne, Switzerland, that topped the Billboard Classical Album chart. Now that's got to feel amazing for you to take Foreigner into uncharted territory.
Yeah, I'm a producer with a #1 record on the classical charts.
Still #1, buddy.
Hey, I mean, there was probably only 6 classical records that week, but whatever.
Now, am I correct in that you had a hand in arranging and producing these recordings? What's that like, and how do you pull off mixing these songs with classical music?
Yeah, I didn't do the string arrangements. That was done by a wonderful man by the name of Dave Egger, who we love dearly and is just such an incredible musician and was so great to work with. And he and Mick just spent months and months just kind of going back and forth with string ideas. And, we were refining up till the day we recorded, making little changes. But overall, the whole idea was we still wanted to rock, but we want to emphasize the textures and the beauty of so much of this music. And we're so happy with the results we got. It just feels like we really tapped into what we wanted to do, and that feels great.
Let's listen to one of those tracks from that exceptional show. That whole album sounds amazing. And I tell you what, if you're out there listening right now on a pair of headphones, you're in for a real treat. Check this out. Live version of Double Vision, Foreigner, backed with the 21st Century Symphony Orchestra and chorus. We're joined on the show this morning by Jeff Pilson of Foreigner. Jeff, there was a show a few years back that celebrated the 40th anniversary of Foreigner, and that show reunited pretty much everybody that had ever been in Foreigner. What was that night like for you? That had to be a heavy moment.
It was an amazing moment. Before we get to that, though, I just want to say one more thing about the orchestral stuff that you just played. There's a live DVD from that show, and it was mixed in surround by Wynn Davis, who is this award-winning, amazing engineer. He does all of our audio stuff now. But anyway, it is a work of art. And if you really want to have an experience, get the DVD, put it in your surround system, kick back and listen. It's wonderful. So anyways, just had to say that because I just did it recently, and I'm not one of those guys that listens to our work a lot because I have to listen to it so much as we're doing it.
Yeah.
But to go back and listen to this was such a joy. So just got to stress that. Now, as far as the Then and Now project that we did a couple years ago, yeah, man, was that ever fun. It was celebrating the 40th anniversary, so we had the original band together, the guys that were with us still, and it was just amazing. The vibe is great. We love those guys. I mean, obviously all of us have a lot of respect for them because we're all Foreigner fans. We really are. So we have a lot of respect for those guys. And then we've become really good friends. I mean, Rick Wills comes to shows all the time, and Rick is just a wonderful man. Love him dearly. His wife, Lynn, is spectacular. So there's a family element to it, too. And it was just really cool. And it was so great to kick back and watch those guys because there is an undeniable chemistry that they have that, was the explosion that started this whole thing. And, you know, we pay attention because we do love Foreigner. We do respect the legacy. We do want to bring out the best in this music. So it was just so fun to be able to do that. And then, you know, we got up and did our thing. And then, of course, we had everybody on stage at the end for the last few songs. And it was just, we called it Super Foreigner. And it was amazing. Just an amazing, fun time.
Last week, I got to talk to Michael Bluestein, your keyboardist. And Michael and I were talking about the embarrassment of Riches and Foreigner because of the catalog. And, you know, that's got to be a dream to pick out the set list when you've got that many songs to choose from. How do you guys do that?
Well, I mean, I'm in charge of the set list, and basically, how much time do we have, and what are going to be the best songs within that time frame? I mean, we have to think a little differently. Like when we go to Europe, some songs are more popular than others over there. But as a rule, it's, you know, the trickiest thing about Foreigner set lists generally is which songs do you leave out.
That would be tough. Well, I'll tell you what, Jeff, I appreciate you calling in this morning and taking the time to visit with me and the listeners. This is Jeff Pilson of Foreigner. He is going to be in our backyard Wednesday night. That is at the Clearfield County Fair on the grandstand stage. And I'll tell you what, Jeff, we have a pair of tickets to give away to the Foreigner concert Wednesday night. I need your help. I actually have two favors to ask you here. One, talking to Michael last week, he told me that his favorite song to play in the set is Long, Long Way From Home. I want to know if you have a favorite, and I want to spin it while we're getting the caller for our giveaway.
Well, I wouldn't say I have a favorite. I'm just not that kind of guy, but I'm going to suggest you play Jukebox Hero.
Sweet. Favorite track of mine. All right, buddy. Well, I'll tell you what. Before I let you go, we are going to give away a pair of passes to see Foreigner Wednesday night, 814-768-WOKW. And, Jeff, what number caller should we take to give the tickets to?
I say number 7.
Always lucky. Jeff Pilson, thank you so much for calling in, buddy. It was a great time getting to speak with you, and I can't wait to see the show Wednesday night.
My pleasure, man. That was great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.